having a great time today for the 9th Fire Drill Fridays focusing on migration.
Alright, need you to keep moving back a little quicker. Thank you.
When we go out and fight wars and fund wars in the military.
Keep going back.
Keep moving. Watch your
Watch
step.
your step.
We end up creating the migration crisis. We end up creating the climate crisis. And then
Keep moving
more,
back.
Sarah,
Watch
a
your
little bit
step.
more.
Watch your step.
off the immigrant detention centers that we created on our border.
Keep going.
Does that seem fair? If not, share this live stream and make sure that everyone
Keep
knows.
moving back. Keep moving back.
Guys, a little bit more, please.
Demanding justice for human rights.
Keep moving back.
Keep going back. More. Sir, back a little bit more.
Today, I have a special
Sir, a little bit more.
keep the carbon in the ground. Take it to the doorsteps.
Keep the carbon in the ground.
A little bit more, sir.
Off of the climate crisis and profiting off of the immigration, profiting off of immigration detention centers that have been in large part been caused by the climate crisis.
So I think we're almost there. Okay, I'll make sure to get her in the shot.
Thank you.
Sanctuary for all. No wall. Sanctuary for all.
Thank you.
Sanctuary for all.
How you doing?
Good. Yeah.
I saved you a copy.
And the Anderson Cooper piece, the interview with Anderson Cooper.
The New York Times piece.
Yeah, the op-ed.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Make sure I can see her. It's almost better for the side.
There's not that many there as well. It's fairly thin.
Keep going.
I'm counting on you and Caroline and Nene. We need some space. We need you to back up.
Arabite is both allergic and terrified of dogs, and her mom and Caroline brought her dog and is staying with Erebus. Yes. No, it really should be.
Thanks for us. You say the Japanese, and I'll be your host for today. Thanks for joining us today on the 9th. We have a huge group here demanding justice for migrants, demanding human rights, and demanding an end to the climate crisis by taking on the doorsteps.
Yo, look at that crowd. Woo!
Alright, let's keep it moving. Thank you. Let's keep moving back. Thank you.
We shall not be moved.
Keep moving back.
We need you to keep moving. Sorry. Thank you.
Please back up a little bit. Thank you.
Please keep going. Thank you. Please keep going. Please keep going. We need you to back up. Watch your step. Watch your step.
Keep moving back.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved.
That's standing idle. We need you to keep moving. Please back up. Please back up.
We shall not be moved.
Just keep moving back in the same place.
Don't follow the media, guys. Follow me, not the media.
Getting on the
on. It was on. It's not.
Everybody. So happy to see you here. Thank you. Can everybody hear all right? On Monday, the World Meteorological Organization released its State of the Climate report to coincide with the opening of COP25, the gathering of world leaders in Madrid to discuss the climate crisis. At the opening of that conference, UN Secretary General delivered the report's findings. He said, and I quote, "The findings are clear. You can't hear? Hello? It wasn't turned on. Okay, is that better? Okay. So I'll start over. On Monday, the World Meteorological Organization released its State of the Climate report to coincide with the opening of COP25, the gathering of world leaders in Madrid to focus on the climate crisis and the Paris Climate Treaty. At the opening of that conference, the UN Secretary General delivered the report. He said, and I quote, "The findings are clear. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded. Sea levels are the highest in human history. Ice caps are melting at unprecedented speed, and the oceans are becoming more acidic with all its consequences. Biodiversity on land and sea is under severe attack. Climate-related natural disasters are becoming more frequent, more deadly, more destructive, with growing human and financial costs. Drought in some parts of the world is progressing at alarming rates, destroying human habitats and endangering food security. Every year, air pollution associated to climate change kills 7 million people. Climate change has become a dramatic threat to human health and to human security. In short, the Secretary General said, climate change is no longer a long-term problem. We are confronted now with a global climate crisis. The point of no return is no longer over the horizon. It is in sight and hurtling toward us." Close quote. I wanted to read that because while we talk about specific aspects of the climate crisis here at Fire Drill Friday, it's important that we keep the big picture in mind. We need to understand that 100% of the climate scientists agree on this. There aren't two sides to the story. There's one side, the science. And we need to be clear about the biggest cause of all of this: fossil fuels, oil, gas, coal, and the plastics, pesticides, and fertilizers that are made from fossil fuels. We also need to know that 25 million Americans are truly alarmed by this. They just aren't organized. 13 million Americans say they would get engaged, but no one has asked them. Fire Drill Fridays is asking them. Yes. And all of you, every one of you, talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbors about the climate crisis. Engage them where they're at. They don't have to start by getting arrested, although they're welcome. Maybe it's the future for their grandchildren they care about. Maybe they love birds, and they should know that 2.9 billion fewer birds exist in North America than were here in 1970. Maybe they don't know that all the climate scientists are in agreement. Anyway, today we're going to focus on one of the most immediate and horrible results of the climate crisis: climate refugees. The latest estimates, speaking of birds, they're welcoming us into the park. Oh, they're so beautiful. Look at that. Wow. They love all of us. We should love them too. Anyway, listen to this. The latest estimates predict that as many as 200 million climate migrants are going to be here in 2050. 200 million. This is also a human rights issue. Climate migrants routinely face life-threatening hardships, discrimination, and repression. And who are we as a people, as a country, if we turn our backs rather than open our hearts to our global neighbors, seeking shelter and safety for their families? We have to think about what we would do in their shoes. We would do the same thing. So to start us off today, I'm going to introduce a friend of mine who will then introduce our first climate migrant expert. I want to introduce Kyra Sedgwick. Yes. Kyra is an actor, a producer, a director, best known perhaps for her starring role in TNT's The Closer. Also, we all know her from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. For the Closer, she won a Golden Globe and an Emmy. And she's directed episodes of Grace and Frankie. And I can tell you, it's really weird being directed by a woman this beautiful. Please, and she's a great director. Please welcome Kyra Sedgwick.
Whoa. Hi. Can everyone hear me? Right on. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about why I'm here. When my first child was born, I became, perhaps for the first time, obsessed with the future, that it would be a good one for my child, or at the very least, that he have a sustainable planet to live on. This was 1989, and the new term greenhouse effect was plastered across headlines, and it felt like we had a moment to change the course of history. People were educated and energized to move away from our addiction to fossil fuel. And tragically, politics got in the way, targeted disinformation abounded, and we lost the moment. But we have another moment now. The conversation is more urgent. It's more frightening than we could have imagined, but we find ourselves asking questions that demand answers and solutions. And while I often despair deeply about our current administration's rollbacks, inaction, and the insanity of denying the science of climate change, I am deeply encouraged by the conversation, the real news, the truth that is coming to the fore, and most insistently and louder than all of these is the passion and rage and the tenacity of the young people, some of whom we will be joining later today and are right here. Thank you all for being part of the solution today. I would like to introduce Reverend Malik Safir. Reverend Malik is a Methodist minister, a scholar, and a community organizer. Safir works with a diverse array of people of faith at the grassroots level, developing leaders who speak truth to power and waging campaigns to eradicate poverty and achieve racial equality in the American South. He is dedicated to uniting the social and environmental justice movements under the banner of climate justice. Reverend Safir is a Green Faith Fellow and Toyota Together Green Follow. Welcome him, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jane, for allowing for us to use this platform as a way.
Get really close to that.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to use this platform, Jane, for an opportunity to speak truth to power. Thank you, Kyra, for introducing me with the correct pronunciation of my name. I know sometimes it's challenging, but Safir is a unique name that means bringing clarity. And so I want to use this platform today to talk about bringing clarity to what we call climate and environmental justice. It is time now, as we stand here together, to recognize that we can no longer delay climate and environmental justice. We need climate and environmental justice now. Do you believe this? Do you believe that our time is now? And we cannot delay any longer the need for justice now, because we are dealing with situations where people are suffering throughout this world from climate change. Not only are people suffering, but the planet is suffering from climate change. And when the people and the planet suffer together because of one unique problem, it is time to divest from fossil fuels. It is time to divest from putting people over, profit over people and profit over the planet. It is time for us to unite under a single banner: climate and environmental justice now. Why? Because as moral and spiritual leaders, we are called to have compassion for those who are the least of these, those who are suffering the most, and they are the front line, the poor, the black and brown, the people of color communities, the indigenous throughout this land and throughout this world, who are the first experiencers of this type of injustice. And when they come to us seeking refuge, seeking sanctuary, will we be prepared to provide them what they are seeking? If we are prepared to provide them what they are seeking, then we should at this moment stand together and realize that we need to do a call to action by our nation and to these corporations, that you will cease and desist from engaging in extraction industries that are polluting this planet and causing migration throughout the world. If we agree to this, then we will be calling all of our people together, wherever we stand and wherever we unite throughout this country and throughout this world, to begin to speak up, to challenge individuals to change their habits of consumption and begin to engage in investing in their personal lives into climate solution. We will seek to tell our institutions, you must change your practices and begin as institutions to no longer support fossil fuel corporations. We will tell the systems in place in power that your policies must change to come up with climate and environmental justice solutions, that we will see a change in this world for the better. Will you unite with us today to catch on fire? That this will not be a fire drill Friday that will remain on Friday, but it will be a fire that is set throughout this world to consume the hearts and minds of people on this planet, to change their focus from injustice to justice, from lack of compassion and lack of empathy for those who are suffering to compassion and also empathy for those who are climate refugees. Stand with us now as we stand together for this change.
Where's the microphone?
In your hand. You're doing great.
I get so carried away, I didn't even know I had the microphone in my hand. Okay, everybody, now I'm going to introduce another friend that you all know, Taylor Schilling. You know her from Orange is the New Black, for which she was nominated for an Emmy and 2 Golden Globes. Please welcome Taylor Schilling.
Hi, I am so excited to be here with you today. I'm so excited you're all here. As this movement is shouting so beautifully, our house is on fire and we are all being impacted. The climate crisis, as Jane explained earlier, is a human rights crisis. And we have a responsibility together, working together to tend to those members of our community that are being hit hardest and first by the climate crisis. Poor people, people of color, our indigenous communities, and hold responsible the people profiting from this crisis. The banks that invested in the fossil fuel industries, which decimated our environment, are now making money on the refugee crisis they perpetuated by investing in companies that run for-profit refugee detention centers and prisons. In addition to profiting financially, these companies supporting for-profit detention centers, like the one that we're all going to be visiting today, continue to be responsible for the deaths of migrant children in their care, including Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vasquez, a 16-year-old Guatemalan immigrant who was dangerously ill when immigration agents put him in a holding cell in an overcrowded processing center in McAllen, Texas. He was diagnosed with the flu upon arrival, and his fever ran to 103 degrees. The attendant on duty said that he should be checked on in 2 hours. None of this happened. Instead, Carlos was moved to quarantine in another facility, and he was found dead the next morning. We only know about this because of recently released video. Leaving a 16-year-old to die a preventable death is an atrocity. Let's stand up for Carlos today. Let all families of detained migrants know we are doing what we can to make their voices heard. By standing in solidarity like we are today, we can show our government that we believe that dignity and love and life matter far more than turning a profit. Thank you guys all for being here today. And I am so honored to introduce Liz Butler, who is the Vice President of Organizing and Strategic Alliances at Friends of the Earth, and an organizer with Shutdown D.C. She brings over 25 years of experience organizing and campaigning on critical issues with a focus on both corporate and legislative campaigns. Please welcome Liz Butler.
My name is Liz Butler. I'm so excited to see how many people came out today to make sure that we're sending a really strong message to the people who are driving the climate crisis. I'm with Friends of the Earth, but I'm also part of a group of folks who came together to shut this town down on the global climate strikes. Last summer, when there was a call to action for the global climate strikes, a whole diverse set of us here in D.C. said the decisions are made here, the climate criminals are here. We need to shut down business as usual to send a message that we need climate action now. This town spends too much time worrying about making sure that the fossil fuel companies are taken care of and not the people around the planet. And all of these things are connected. We know a couple of things about today. We're all out here to make sure that it's not just the oil companies and the coal companies that get held accountable, but the companies that give them the money to do it. We're talking about companies like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase Bank, and the secret ones none of us know about, like BlackRock. How many people have heard of BlackRock? These people are driving in funding the climate crisis. They are one of the largest funders of the fossil fuel industry. They're also funding deforestation that is driving the fires in the Amazon. But let me tell you, they don't stop there. They understand this is all connected. They also fund the company that has a database of immigrants in the United States so that ICE can track people for detention and deportation. It's ridiculous. So don't confuse yourself that it's just the fossil fuel industry. They would not be able to do this without the money that they're getting from the financiers, including Chase, BlackRock, and others. So we need to be here today to send an incredibly strong message that we want them to stop funding the climate crisis. We want them to defund forestation, and we want them to stop cooperating with ICE, abolish ICE, and actually work with the people. And if they don't, we're going to shut it down. Shut it down. Shut it down. All right. I look forward to the rest of the day where we get to shut it down.
Thank you, Liz. And now I want to introduce another friend, a wonderful actor named Maura Tierney, who has starred in shows like ER and The Affair, for which she won a Golden Globe. Maura has also appeared in a lot of films, including most recently The Report. Please welcome Maura Tierney.
Hi. Thank you, Jane. I'm very grateful to have been included in today's events. And I'm here briefly because I think it is my responsibility as a citizen to demand change from our political leaders in the face of this crisis. And I want to thank Jane for reminding all of us what it means to be a good citizen. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Saket Soni. He's a labor organizer and human rights strategist. He is founder and director of Resilience Force, a national initiative to transform America's response to natural disasters by strengthening and securing America's resilience workforce. After Hurricane Katrina in 2006, Saket co-founded the New Orleans Workers Center for Racial Justice. Under his leadership, the organization won organizing and policy victories for both U.S.-born and immigrant workers engaged in the reconstruction of New Orleans. Saket is recognized as a national expert on post-disaster economies, immigrant rights, and the future of work.
How are you all doing? How are you all doing? Are you mad? Are you fed up? Are you going to march? I've been organizing on the front lines of climate change since Hurricane Katrina. And I am here to tell you that the climate migrant is not somebody who is going to knock on our door in the future. And the climate crisis is not something that is going to start tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or next month or next year. And we do not have to wait until 2050 when there will be 200 million climate migrants to stop what's coming. The problem is happening now. It is taking place in the lives of people right now, not far away, here in America, in every town, and we can march to stop it now. Are you with me? Now, the climate crisis is all around us, but in the midst of that crisis, in Houston after Harvey, in Puerto Rico after Maria, in New Orleans after Katrina, there is a new kind of climate hero. A new activist, a new builder, a new character in this story who's asking for justice. And that justice is about climate justice and immigration justice, because climate justice is immigrant justice. Now there's a new kind of climate hero, and that's the person rebuilding people's homes after these disasters. Each day in America, millions of people lose their homes and are forced to flee because of floods and fires and hurricanes and storms. Maybe some of you are among them. Maybe it includes your friend or your family. Now think about someone in your life who was there for you. These heroes are there for us, and I'm here to introduce them. Many of them are immigrants, many are undocumented, and two of them are here with us today. Two members of my organization, Resilience Force, have been rebuilding Florida and the Gulf Coast hurricane after hurricane. First, I want you to hear from Joel Salazar. Joel has rebuilt after 5 successive hurricanes. He's here with us today from Florida, from Venezuela by way of Florida. Please welcome Joel Salazar.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
Mi nombre es Joel Salazar.
My name is Joel Salazar.
Soy inmigrante de Venezuela. Soy trabajador para reconstruir hogares y comunidades devastadas por el cambio climático.
My name is Joel Salazar. I'm from Venezuela, and I am a climate worker. I am a resilience worker to rebuild communities affected by climate change.
Soy un inmigrante que viene huyendo de una dictadura y de un problema político y económico de mi país.
I am also a refugee who has left my country because of the economic and political situation of my country.
Desde que llegué a Estados Unidos me dediqué a reconstruir ciudades enteras que han sido devastadas por el cambio climático. He trabajado en 5 huracanes.
Since I arrived in the U.S., I have been working as a resilience worker, rebuilding after 5 natural hurricanes and natural disasters.
El primero de ellos fue María, el segundo Irma, estuve en Florence, estuve en Harvey, estuve en Michael.
I worked Maria, Irma, Florence, Michael.
Todos esto me trajo a mí a reclutar personas, amigos y hasta mi madre.
This also brought me to recruit other workers, including my friends and my mother from Venezuela.
Esto me trajo un pequeño problema porque desde que empecé a trabajar fuimos estafados la última vez por una gran empresa, de lo cual mi madre se lesionó y no he podido recuperarla.
Working under a large company rebuilding after hurricanes, my mother actually was hurt on the job, and it's brought me a lot of pain because for 3 more months we worked and we're not paid.
Hasta ahora no he podido hacer nada por ella porque no nos han pagado. Aún así, nos seguimos dedicando a ayudar a las personas que perdieron sus casas por el cambio climático.
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to help my mother because of our economic situation, but nevertheless, we continue to rebuild homes of those people affected by climate change.
Y aunque el hecho de que esté el día de hoy aquí, sé que me puede traer consecuencias, estoy siendo la voz de las personas que no pueden hablar. estoy siendo el justo, el que quiere pedir que necesitamos derechos como trabajadores y un estatus migratorio.
I'm here and speaking, I'm taking a risk by speaking for those who do not have a voice, and I'm here representing them as well. And I'm here to ask that we workers have rights and have an immigration status as well.
Gracias por eso.
Thank you.
These workers are rebuilding America in the midst of climate change every day. And as they're doing it, they work and live in fear of deportation. They arrive because of a refugee crisis, because of a climate crisis, because of an immigrant crisis. They rebuild homes, and then they are funneled into a detention and deportation system. And all of it is pain for our communities, and all of it is profit for the companies we're marching against today. Here to speak on that is Héctor Emilio Ribamar. He is from Argentina, and he has also been rebuilding Florida after the imminent climate crisis there.
Bueno, hola a todos. Soy Héctor Emilio Ribamar, vengo de Argentina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Héctor Ribamar, and I am from Argentina.
Vengo de una familia muy pobre, por esa razón fue mi decisión de ser inmigrante y venir a este país, a los Estados Unidos.
I come from a very poor family, and that's why I decided to make the choice to risk everything I had and immigrate to the United States.
Participo y trabajo de todo lo que son los desastres climáticos y es ahí donde conocí y me hice parte de la Fuerza Resiliente.
I am also a resilience worker, and that is how I came into the organization called Resilience Force.
Bien. Donde no solo organizamos a los trabajadores, sino que también ayudamos a todas esas familias que han perdido sus hogares y que no pueden recuperarlos porque también tienen una situación de pobreza.
So in addition to organizing other resilience workers, we also help rebuild the homes of people who have been directly impacted by climate change. We rebuild the homes of those who cannot afford to rebuild their homes.
Bueno, como saben, yo ya soy un inmigrante y es muy duro dejar nuestra casa, pero aquí también los estadounidenses y todas las personas que son afectadas por crisis climáticas.
So as you know, I am an immigrant, and it's been very difficult to leave my country. But also people here who are impacted by climate change are also refugees.
Ellos también son inmigrantes, ellos tuvieron que dejar su casa, su hogar, su familia, el lugar a donde se criaron y se convirtieron en algo tan parecido a lo que soy yo.
So the people who have had to leave their homes, their communities, they are very similar to me because they've also had to leave their communities.
Por eso también creo que Estados Unidos no solamente debería tener un refugio para personas que tienen de refugios políticos, perdón, sino también para personas que sufren crisis climáticas.
So the U.S. should also recognize not only political refugees, but also climate refugees.
Thank you.
Before I introduce the next speaker, can we take a moment to acknowledge the bravery of these men? We're all standing up, but some of us are taking more risks than others, and they are risking everything they have in this country. So they're taking a stand, and the question is, are we going to stand with them in their fight for climate justice and immigration justice? Okay. Next up, I would like to introduce Imam Safet Kadovic. He's Green Faith's senior Islamic advisor, was a founding leader of Bosnian Task Force USA, which worked to end the Bosnian genocide. Safed has led global efforts to promote fossil fuel divestment within the Muslim community. He is co-chair and founder of the Green Muslims of New Jersey and a member of the Islamic Society of North America's Task Force on Green Mosques, which was the first Muslim fossil fuel divestment commitment. He is a drafter of the International Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change and a founding board member of the Global Muslim Climate Network.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Sister Maura. Assalamu alaikum, peace, shalom alaikum, pax Christi, shante, and many other words that we use to greet one another. And I will share with you in the Muslim tradition, Juma Mubarak. Juma Mubarak is said on Fridays because the Muslim holy day is Friday. It is a day of gathering. It is a day of coming together for a sacred purpose. And I thank my sister Jane for making the call and bringing us all together for this sacred purpose. It is also the greeting, contained within this greeting of peace, is the idea that with peace comes security, and there cannot be any security without justice for all. I also began by reminding us that we are all sisters and brothers, but in case some of us forget, our sisters and brothers include the trees that are here, that are witnessing what we are saying, and probably a lot older than many of us, our ages put together. And they are witnessing. It includes the flock of birds that flew around us, and in the religious tradition of Islam, when flocks of birds fly around, that is a sign of God's blessing and God's light on what we are doing. And that what we stand for is what we stand on, the earth, and specifically here in Washington, D.C., the lands which were the ancestral homes of the Anacostia Indians, and they don't belong to us. We have to recognize those who came before us and cared for the lands and showed us what true civilization means. Now, I am an immigrant. I am the son of an immigrant and the grandson of an immigrant. The grandson of immigrants on my mother's side came through Ellis Island. And we know they did not have all their papers in order. And we know that the America of that time had some issues with some prejudice regarding different peoples and different communities. But still America welcomed to her shores those who came from other nations, opening their hearts and hands, because we know when immigrants are here, America does better and always renews itself through immigration. And it's time we recognize this in our policies. On my father's side, I am the son of my late father, Dr. Safed, who migrated here from the Balkans after World War II. He was a survivor of the genocide wrought against Bosnian Muslims at that time. That was part of the genocides that were wrought against many peoples in the Holocaust against our Jewish brothers and sisters. He came to this land as a political refugee. Yes, you can escape a land because you don't want to leave it, but you have no choice. Those who come to the borders of our nation have no choice. They don't want to leave home, but they have no choice. And America has to honor the legacy of immigration because we are a land of immigrants. I want to say special thanks today, and I have 1 minute left, to the trees who have allowed us to breathe. Who have allowed us to breathe. The very oxygen we breathe comes from them. And how are they rewarded? Being cut down, deforestation, removal of their ability to cleanse the air by the amount of pollution we're putting in the air. Now, we are all at some level complicit in this, myself included. But there are actors that are much more directly responsible for this. Those who, as our Reverend Malik reminded us, put profit over people. We are responsible to call them to account. We need to keep it in the ground. 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 The scientists tell us 80% of fossil fuels need to stay in the ground. And we're going to tell that in our voices as citizens, in our voices as peoples of faith, as we march, as we organize, as we advocate, as we push the envelope, as we call those corporations who are going after insatiable greed at the expense of all of our lives and the lives of our children. Keep it in the ground. Salam, peace.
Hi. Okay, I'm here to introduce Reverend Noel Anderson. He is the grassroots coordinator for the World Church Service, where he has developed a national network of faith communities taking action in solidarity, immigrants, and refugees. Noel works to ensure that CWS is engaging faith communities in the growing sanctuary movement's prophetic resistance to deportation policies. He is ordained in the United Church of Christ and is the lead organizer for the UCC National Collaborative on Immigration. Please welcome him.
Thanks. Let me start off by saying when our planet's under attack, what do? When our planet's under attack, what do? What do? It is time for us to stop talking about this in future tense. It's not climate change, it's climate changed. The climate has changed already. This past July was the hottest ever recorded on the planet. We are now dangerously close to irreversible tipping points that will further disrupt the global weather systems forever. We have to call it what it is, a climate crisis. And it will displace millions of people worldwide, causing massive human suffering and vulnerability. And guess what? I think you all know this, but the most affected did not cause this. And as a faith-based organization, a humanitarian refugee resettlement organization, a church world service, we care just like you do about the children, about the women, about the migrants, about the refugees who will be disproportionately affected by the impacts of this climate crisis. People who endure hunger, poverty, marginalization, persecution, war, conflict, those who are discriminated because of their ethnicity, sexual or gender identity, or their race. These are the people that will be most affected. The U.S. extraction of oil and gas and coal helped it become the wealthiest country. But it is the country that is most responsible and has the largest cumulative greenhouse gas emissions. Yet this administration is subsidizing the oil industry at $26 billion a year? Boo, that's right. This retrograde action on climate is happening, and it's at the same time of tearing down the protections of asylum seekers, of refugees, of migrants seeking protection. It's another erosion of our democracy to turn away these vulnerable populations who are becoming displaced because of the vast pollution the U.S. is creating. So as people of faith, we are marching to, and people of conscience, we are marching to these financial institutions today because they are the largest investment, have the largest investment in core civic and Geo Group private detention centers, making millions off family separation and suffering of migrants. They're also putting billions of dollars into the world's largest oil companies, Exxon, Chevron, BP, to name a few. We can't have it both ways. We can't continue to support fossil fuel extraction, which causes the climate crisis, and then shut the doors on those who are being impacted and displaced because of this contamination and pollution. We have a moral responsibility to act in solidarity with these communities. And that's why we're marching today. This is why we joined the the Fire Drill Fridays, and the National Climate Action Day to reaffirm our solidarity with immigrants while addressing the dire need to stop future displacement and climate change. We're calling on our policymakers. We're calling on the banks to stop funding detention centers, to stop funding the fossil fuel industry, and to join this struggle now to stop detention and promote climate policies that reflect our values of justice, equity, compassion, and truth. So I want to thank especially Hector and Joel for their testimonies today, because we need those voices the most of those testimonies of people who are most impacted. And let us continue to pray and to act for climate justice now. Let us continue to pray and act to stop detention now. Let us continue to pray and act to stop deportations now. Let me hear you say, when refugees are under attack, what do we do? When refugees are under attack, what do we do? What do we do?
Hi, it's my pleasure now to introduce Susan Gunn, who's the director of the Mary Knoll Office of Global Concerns.
Hello, my beautiful friends. You are beautiful. I love you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Jane, for this invitation and bringing us here. My beautiful friends, we are here today because of the growing, overwhelming, heartbreaking cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. We hear it. We need the banks and the financial institutions that profit off of the immigrants' misery and the earth's destruction to hear it too. I speak on behalf of the Catholic faith leaders here today and those joining solidarity strikes across the country in Omaha, Madison, St. Louis, Rochester, Providence. They include Sisters of Mercy, Franciscan Action Network, Sisters of the Good Shepherd, and my community, the Mary Knoll Missioners, Catholic lay people, sisters, priests, and brothers who respond to a deeply spiritual call to follow the example of Christ and serve vulnerable people. And that includes climate refugees. We have Mary Knoll missioners living and working with migrants, refugees, internally displaced people in South Sudan, Uganda, Iraq, Bangladesh, Thailand, Hong Kong, Haiti, Brazil, Guatemala, and on the southern border, just to name a few places. And here's what we know. Our world is heating up. The Earth is already 1 degree Celsius warmer since the 19th century. And global temperatures matter. We already see and feel the impacts of climate change, especially on the lives of our vulnerable sisters and brothers who are least able to respond to disruptions like drought and extreme storms, heat waves, fires. I want to tell you the story of one mother and her children from Honduras who were traveling on a massive migrant caravan to the U.S. border last April. And when she and the caravan passed through a small town in Guatemala where Mary Knoll's sister Dee Smith lives, Sister Dee was there to offer water and food. She saw that this mother looked so tired, and she said, "Are you okay? Come sit with me." And the mother immediately broke down in tears, exhausted. You see, one of her children uses a wheelchair. This mother was pushing her son's wheelchair from Honduras through Guatemala, across Mexico to reach the U.S. border. It's not hard to guess why. In Honduras, the entrenched poverty and the worst criminal violence in the world have long made life difficult. But also the fact that they have had drought in Honduras for the past 4 out of 5 years has forced this mother and many people to flee their homes and caravan north. Yes, global temperatures matter. And what about people?
The World Bank says that climate change could create more than 200 million climate refugees by 2050. We need to do everything we can to keep warming below 1.5 degrees. We need the banks and financial institutions to stop funding and profiting from fossil fuel industries and delaying our shift from an economy based on fossil fuels to one based on efficient renewables. We need them to stop funding the inhumane and immoral for-profit immigration detention system. Amen. Together, my beautiful friends, we can lift our voices and fill the streets to make them hear us, to make them hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. By being here together today, we are already making the shift to a more sustainable civilization. Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming Claudia Quinones from United We Dream.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Quinones. I am the D.C., Maryland, Virginia organizer for United We Dream. I organize with immigrant youth and their families. I am also undocumented, unafraid, unapologetic, and here to stay. Like many undocumented young people, I am concerned every day about the mass deportation system in this country and the climate crisis. Undocumented young people who have transnational experiences and intersectional identities understand the connection between immigration and climate change and how they affect their lives in everyone in our communities. We know that fracking, water pollution, mining, deforestation, oil and cement companies is the main reason why so many people migrate to the U.S. In fact, before coming to the U.S., there was a water crisis in my country of origin. I remember being 6, 7 years old, and my family not being able to buy food because there was no food. We didn't have water, and people killed over basic necessities. The only right response to the climate crisis requires addressing broken immigration system in this country, acknowledging that water is life and the land is sacred. We need a response that does not include cages, walls, and deportations, but one where our country opens their arms and gives migrants the opportunity to thrive and not live in food deserts, in poverty, in fear, and in other inhumane conditions. We also want policy making that above everything thinks about helping people without hurting people. The moment that we're in right now is testing our values. Our generation is looking for leaders who represent those values and move our country and our global society in a new direction. We're also looking inside ourselves because we know that young people have always been at the forefront of any social progressive movements. Newsboys in New York fought for child labor laws. Students led Freedom Summer actions in the civil rights movement. College students led protests against Vietnam War. Immigrant youth have led on immigrant rights to deliver victories like DACA and ensuring that the District of Columbia truly becomes a sanctuary city. High schoolers have taken on the gun lobby. We do this because we know that we deserve better and we won't take anything less than dignity for an answer. We take up these issues because every generation that comes up can envision a better, more inclusive future. So now, if you can please repeat after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you.
And now please welcome Josh Alvarez from the Sunrise Movement.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Alvarez, and I'm a member of Sunrise D.C. I want to share some of my story and why I'm here today. My father grew up in extreme poverty and started migrating to the U.S. at the age of 17 to work low-wage jobs to make a living for his 13 siblings in Mexico. 30 years ago, after meeting my mother, they left everything in Mexico and crossed the Rio Grande River in search for a better future for my sister and me. My sister and I were born in Dallas, Texas, in a working-class community of color comprised of immigrants. I feel fortunate enough to be here today to share where I come from. I went to school in West Dallas, in an area that has been deeply affected by pollution because of the big industries. Dallas is one of the most polluted metropolitan areas in the nation. Many of my friends developed asthma and other respiratory illnesses because of those industries. That's the reason why I'm here today, to fight on their behalf and to fight on behalf of my community. And it's the same reason why I chose to serve in the Peace Corps after I graduated college. From 2016 to 2018, I had the honor of serving in a Native community in the western part of Costa Rica called Matambu, where I worked with Native and indigenous leaders. This is where I saw firsthand the impact that the climate crisis is having on a global scale. My friend Marvin would share with me how he no longer wanted to live in Matambu because there were no work opportunities there, because of the traditional jobs like harvesting rice and corn did not pay enough. I noticed that the impacts of the climate crisis weren't just affecting Marvin. Throughout the 2 years that I was there, many of the community members would share with me how the crops were no longer producing the same yields due to unpredictable weather patterns. This caused many of them to have to rely on alternative work opportunities, having to migrate to the nation's capital, and some would share with me their desire to come to the U.S., just like the many migrants and climate refugees from Central America who are currently being held in concentration camps in our border. Let us acknowledge that the climate crisis is an intersectional issue that ties together racial, native, migrant, and economic justice. In the words of Audre Lorde, there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. When I hear the stories and I look at the children currently being held in ISIS detention centers, I struggle with trauma and anxiety because of that fear. And I hold that same fear because as a child, I would think that the government would one day separate me from my family, friends, and my community. Today, as we come together and form coalitions to grow our movements for justice, let us acknowledge that the immigration system that is corrupt and evil at the core cannot be reformed. An abusive agency like ICE needs to be abolished, defunded, and dismantled. And the same goes for large, too big to fail financial institutions. We can no longer rely on them to do what is right. We must transform our economy into one that is publicly owned with cooperatives. Today, we must not only hold J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and BlackRock accountable for funding the fossil fuel industry who are causing the climate crisis, but we must also hold them accountable for profiting from the trauma and abuse of child migrants and refugees in for-profit prisons. We must demand that J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and BlackRock divest from both the fossil fuel industry and for-profit prisons. We should also begin to follow the example of countries like Costa Rica, which have been successfully running on renewable energy throughout the past few years, relying solely on their natural resources. If they can do it, so can we. We can become a model for the world on how a large nation can transition into a 100% publicly owned renewable energy. And we can do so by learning from countries that are ahead of us and listening to native leaders who have always been protective of Mother Nature and hold transformative wisdom. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome to this stage Rabbi David Schneier, Chaplain D. Herman, and Rabbi Devorah Lynn, who will be reading the new rabbinic statement on climate crisis Elijah's covenant between the generations to heal our endangered earth.
Shalom Aleichem. Salam Alaikum. Peace. Welcome everyone. Can you hear in the back? Can you hear? After me, can you hear? Say, can you hear? To the White House. Can you hear? To the Congress. Can you hear? Once again. One more time. I hope they hear. This statement it was composed, written by Rabbi Arthur Waskow from the Shalom Center in Philadelphia. And it's been signed by more than 400 rabbis, cantors, Jewish clergy, spiritual leaders, and teachers in the from the Jewish community. We quote at the beginning of the statement from the prophet Malachi. I will send you the prophet Elijah to turn the hearts of the parents to children and the hearts of children to parents, lest I come and utterly destroy the earth. For the first time in the history of humanity, we are actually moving toward the burning and devastation of the web of life on earth by human action, the unremitting use of fossil fuels. Our children and grandchildren face deep misery and death unless we act. They have turned their hearts toward us. Our hearts, our minds, our arms, our legs are not yet turned toward them. Can we more fully turn our hearts to these, our children? It will mean, 1, studying our wisdom and today's truest science of earth-human relationships. 2, lifting up old prayers and new old rituals and new that celebrate earth. Welcoming refugees who have fled the storms, floods, and famines that beset their homes because of global scorching. Urging our banks and our politicians to move our money, protect our earth, move away from investments and subsidies of carbon corporations, and protect by investing in renewable wind and solar energy. Persuading ourselves and our congregations and communities to move our own money, create solar energy co-ops, establish carpools to lessen reliance on gas, and adopt additional modes of kashrut to include foods and energy sources that heal, not harm our planet. Join our young people in urging our governments to legislate a swift and massive program that intertwines ecological sanity and social justice, as they were intertwined in the biblical practice of Shemitah, the sabbatical 7th year from Leviticus 25. Shaping all these efforts as expression of joyful community and not fearful drudgery.
The nearest analog to that ancient Shemitah practice, to have brought together the hearts and minds of youth and elders today, is the Green New Deal. Among its urgent demands, swiftly end the burning of fossil fuels, provide millions of well-paid new jobs to install the necessary network of renewable energy for an economy freed from the tyranny of carbon, sustain those workers whose jobs disappear as we move from the old economy to the new one, empower neighborhoods of color and of entrenched poverty, indigenous peoples, and other marginalized communities that have already been suffering the worst impacts of fossil fuel harm and dead-end economic despair. Reforest Earth and defend our natural wildlife refuges. And take carefully vetted steps to restore a climate as life-giving to our grandchildren as it was to our grandparents.
This social transformation is the fruit that can grow only from the roots of spiritual wisdom. We come back to the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, the interbreath. In planetary terms, that interbreath is the inter-exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide that keeps animals and plants alive. It is precisely that interbreath that is now in crisis, as the overmanufacture of CO2 by burning fossil fuels overwhelms the ability of plants to transmute the CO2 to oxygen, and thus heats, scorches, burns our common home. Our sacred task requires affirming not only the biological ecosystem, but also a cultural, social ecosystem. Ecosystem, the modern word for how the diverse images of God become echad, become one. Jews, indigenous nations, Christians, Muslims, Unitarians, Buddhists, Hindus, and the many others, each community must bring their own unique wisdom to join in the name of the one who is the interbreathing spirit of all life, whose universal breathing is the nameless name, the still, small voice that supports and suffuses all the many diverse names of God in many cultures and communities. That interbreathing spirit. Everyone take a deep breath and breathe it out with your neighbor. That interbreathing spirit supports and suffuses all life on planet Earth.
In ancient times and throughout history, we've used the ram's horn, the shofar, to get our attention, of warning. And also it's a sound of liberation. So first we're going to an awakening. Thank you, wake up. First the sound of warning. And we address this to everyone here, and to all the leaders in this nation, and to all the people in this world. The sound of warning, and then be followed by a sound of hope and liberation. We each have a shofar within us. If I can invite everyone here, take a deep breath, and to do a sound of the shofar from deep within. Take a deep breath and and hold it, hold it. Chazak, chazak, be strong, and let us strengthen each other.
It is now my honor to introduce Reverend Kaji S. Dosha. She is a senior pastor of the Park Avenue Christian Church in New York City. For the better part of 10 years, she has served as co-chair of the New Sanctuary Coalition, an immigrant-led coalition of faith leaders and community members who work to stop deportations and keep families together in sharp resistance of the swelling power and injustices perpetrated by ICE. In June, after being placed on a secret government watch list of humanitarian workers, attorneys, and journalists called Operation Secure Line, that literally placed Pastor Dosha in the government's crosshairs, she filed suit in federal court against DHS, ICE, and CPB for their retaliation against her religious freedom.
Thank you so much. I am charged this morning, or this afternoon now, with wrapping up our time here in the park. And as I do, I ask, can you sense it? Because there is something in the air. And no, I don't just mean the stench that is wafting down here from Pennsylvania Avenue, the stench of sulfur. I don't mean just that, but there is something in the air. Because as climate continues to change, we change too. Led by our children and young people, by indigenous defenders of this earth, by black and brown environmental justice activists, led by people just as you see as you look around here today, realizing that what we had done before will not be enough. Yes, there is something in the air. And it's not just the pollutants to which we have become so immorally addicted. But I would submit that the change involves a sense of possibility. Because the Spirit of the Lord is upon us to proclaim good news to the poor and liberty to the captive. And the captive includes the predatory profit seekers we target today. Amen? And they need to know. They need to know that the Spirit of the Lord is upon them too, and judgment has already been rendered. So you are actually here to do them a favor, you see, because when we give them the chance to repent and to divest for the sake of the preservation of life, they get their chance to be saved. Because the time is now, right? The time is because we have placed the responsibility of the survival of all species on our children, on my daughter who hasn't even started kindergarten. So we are here to stand with them and to protect life. And that is an act of love. So you may not know me, but I work with migrants in New York City with the New Sanctuary Coalition, led by Ravi Rugbeer, who is himself facing deportation, and staffed by thousands of volunteers of New Yorkers, including faith leaders who are saying enough is enough. And we stop deportations. We are effective at stopping deportations because we say that sanctuary means the preservation of lives and families. And we will not deport people to their deaths, and they cannot deport a movement. But know that you are on the side of the righteous. And around this time last year, we banded together with our friends at an organization called Al Otro Lado. I love shouting out organizations. In Tijuana, to respond to the increasing numbers of migrants who have come from across the world, inspired by the changing global migration patterns, pushing people out of the global south, out of places that have become uninhabitable because of our own actions. And just as my other folks have said, then we turn them away when we caused this problem. We have to repent. And we went to meet and to witness and to accompany these migrants as they exercise their right to live and to keep their families together. And as I talked to them and prayed with them and officiated their marriage, for which the government is actually trying to give us consequences, time and time again, we heard about the direct and severe consequences of lands that climate change has rendered unlivable. The earth is burning. But we have the chance right here and right now to pivot. And with the love of our hearts and the perseverance of our spirits, we will burn this earth with justice. Amen? So we march today to bring peace where there is war. We march to reverse the effects of climate change. We march to open our borders. We march because the mass exodus that we created requires a response of compassion, not criminalization. We march because we have to. And as I wrap up, I want to share the prayer that so many migrants have taught so many of us. It's called the Oración del Migrante. I'll start it in Spanish and end it in English. Viajar hacia ti, Señor, eso es vivir. Partir es un poco morir. The journey towards you, Lord, is life. To set off is to die a little. To arrive is never to arrive until one is at rest with you, because you, Lord, experienced migration. You brought it upon all who know what it is to live, who seek safe passage to the gates of heaven. You drove Abraham from his land, father of all believers in our traditions. You shall remember the paths leading to you, the prophets and the apostles. Tú mismo te hiciste migrante del cielo a la tierra. Indeed, we march as our migrant friends march across the Suez Canal to the shores of the Mediterranean, to our southern border here in the U.S. You are on the side of the righteous. So here's how I want to invite us to close. We have a tradition in New York City where we circle 26 Federal Plaza, which is the site of so much injustice. It's where the immigration courts are housed. It is where ICE has its offices. And we have what we call in New Sanctuary a Jericho walk, which circles the space. And we do it 11 times, every single week in silence. And at the end, we pray and we roar. So we just had a chance to pray. But I want to invite you into a moment of silence. And as we come out of it, let's roar. And then I'll invite Jane Fonda back up. Let's have a moment of silence. And now we roar. Roar! Roar. So let's go cleanse the air. My name is Kaji Dosha. Thank you very much. Please come back up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so while we continue to protest the inhumane treatment of climate refugees and all refugees, after hearing our speakers today, and I'm so grateful to them, I just want to say one more thing. We must never again vote for anyone that does not have empathy, that does not understand compassion, and that is not brave. Because it's going to take tremendous courage for our elected officials, not just here in Washington, but in every state, in every city, in every town. Everyone has to stand up to combat the climate crisis, and it will take courage. Don't forget to follow Fire Drill Friday on Facebook. So funny for me to say this at my age. We didn't even have computers back then. On Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And to visit firedrillfriday.com for details on our upcoming teach-ins and rallies. Okay, and here's the final one. You can also text Jane at 877-877 for updates on Fire Deal Fridays and ways to get involved. Okay, now we're going to march. We're going to march over there toward 14th and K, and then follow the directions of our marshals who are in red vests. God bless you all. I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone, please move into the street. We're not going to be able to start the march unless everybody in the park who wants to go on the march moves into the street. Please move into the street.
ain't letting you go. Don't let go. Don't let go. I just want you to know, I ain't letting you go. Don't let go. Back up, guys. Back up, back up, back up. Back up, back up. Oh, I would have walked. Back up, back up. Back up, guys. Back up, back up, back up. Go underneath, go underneath. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. Shut it down. All right, let's go. Back up, guys. Back up. Okay. Back up. Hey, Mike. Yo. We need immediate movement. We don't all need it. James. Movement. I got that. We don't get it. Shut it down. 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 Off of me, sir. Back up! Back up, guys! Back, guys! Back! We need to stay back! We're going to give you all a shot. We're going to move back up. Hey, Mike, come back and stay right here. Back outside.
Media should keep going that way.
Well, some crazy sort of try to sell shirt up.
feel? How do you feel? Are you ready for a Green New Deal? Back. Guys, let's go. Back.
The other one's out there, Tom.
Yeah, I gotta get out of your way, man.
This way, guys. One more block.
That's a good shot for you, though.
Yeah, you want to come up?
No, I'm fine. Sort of the angling down to you?
Yeah, so I can put it over.
Yeah.
So what do you think we should do about carbon tax? Carbon tax. Carbon tax. Realistic solutions, not a Green New Deal. Realistic solutions, not a Green New Deal. Back up. Well, the problem is, about the carbon tax is a more realistic solution to help us. We're not going to pass a Green New Deal. Just accept it. Accept it, Jay. You failed with Repeal 77. You're going to fail with the Green New Deal. This is what democracy looks like. I know what America. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. How do you feel? How do you feel? I am ready for a Green New Deal. How do you feel? How do you feel? I am ready for a Green New Deal. How do you feel? How do you feel? I am ready for a Green New Deal. How do you feel? How do you feel? I am ready for a Green New Deal. I know what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Stop. Back up.
over me, so I'm going to turn this off.
Here you go, I'm just turning this on. Oh, you okay?
Yeah, better not do that. Hey man, you should right in front of me there, please.
We don't get it! Shut it down! 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 Lose your money backing! No gold! No backing! Lose your money backing! No gold! No backing! Lose your money backing! No gold! No backing!
Profit off the world's crisis. Ooh, pump our atmosphere full of carbon without you. We're working on a Green New
battery on there. And I'm live. Yeah. Great, thanks. Oh wow, thank you.
We got one up here.
Right, Sam, I'm getting you a megaphone and you're going to
Camera people ruin everything. Move back a little bit.
Step back, guys. Step back.
Yeah, it's got, hey.
We need the media to step back. 3 big steps. Everybody, please take 3 big steps back so people who are actually doing the action can get up here. Please take 3 big steps back. Please take 3 big. We need everyone, even if you're at the end of the sidewalk, move back. Thank you. Thank you. Move back.
Church generation. No one else knows anything. No one else demanding justice for migrants.
Put Jane in front. Jane in front. Jane in front. Jane in front. I'm not a girl. You can't move up there because there's steps. Ah, okay. That should be sure. You can't kill yourself. It's working. Jane in front. There we go. Share the limelight. How many times does that happen? Well, that's my 3rd battery. I can't see it. James hiding behind stone face redhead. There we go.
We are here, Black Rock, to ask you to divest from fossil fuels of the trading complex. I want to mention Juan and Claudia Gomez, whose lives were lost in Guatemala due to violence and the climate crisis. Also make Popó of Bolivia, which was declared officially evaporated in 2015, and where mining companies could have prevented the evaporation in 1982. Come and meet me afterwards for more information on upcoming events in D.C. that are linked with fair housing. My name is Ryan. My thought is that everyone is like a migrant person in a way because we have an inclination to be nomadic. The exception are those who want to follow cultural traditions that prohibit them from travel. We must get hungry, Black Rock, learning to live in the jungles that we have left. We have to understand the forest better, and not just what they provide, but also how to give back to the forest. We have the chance to learn now with people of the forest alive. We have to be innovative thinkers who want togetherness. Animal rights are surfacing as a topic of conversation for professionals and working class folks as a result of the climate crisis. We must speak of how we tended to these animals with better living conditions before, and we must stop being Darwinian survivors. I have lived experience of being in South America and experiencing the privatization of water amongst abundance of crops placed in markets with low sales. Though I'm not a community organizer, we have to get those organizing to care. Woo! As growers ourselves, we have solutions to rotate crops not as a choice, but as a change to a pattern we've been stuck in. We have the invention of plant barns that we can attend to schools and cultural centers. We must hold organizations like the U.S. Postal Service accountable for offsetting their own carbon footprint by transporting seeds basically for free to growing whose lands like those in Seattle and Oregon are suffering soil depletion. We must hold accountable green businesses for being affordable, that when a smoothie shop opens, the workers have the right to unionize, and that in those unions, they are divesting from monocultural farms and reinvesting in growers who have seed diversity. We must individually contribute to seed diversity by not throwing out the seeds, but exchanging what we do have with growers, local and far away, where those seeds will grow into plants. We have to change our infrastructure so that it is possible to be alive in the wild, transitioning in and out of shelters and storms. Our ideas of migrants have to change with that infrastructure. At Standing Rock and Mauna Kea, indigenous peoples have created libraries and traveling workshops for kids and adults alike. We have to adapt our thinking. In Peru, during the late phase of the eco-revolution, green food has evolved to raw and vegan dieting as well as sprouted goods and fermented ones too. We must support our local with our business, yes, but even more so with our presence. Lastly, the consequences of inaction lead us down to a path of aggression within humanity. There are too many deaths. To mention them all by name will take a long time. We already have the genocide of natives to recover from, and our patterns have to kindly shift in their favor by having us recognize what has already been resolved with the learning of treaties, peace agreements between the native nations and U.S. government. In the words of Berta Cáceres, Mother Earth can't wait. Wake up!
Did you hear her? And let's hear it. Look at all these fantastic young activists who are the reason that we're here today. Let's hear it for them. BlackRock, Chase, Wells Fargo, can you hear us? We're here because we have a message for you. Yes. No longer can you invest and finance fossil fuel infrastructure that will destroy this planet. No more can you finance prisons and detention centers that incarcerate innocent people fleeing for their lives. You have a choice between right and wrong, and you must choose right. We will not stop.
Can you hear us? 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 Washington, can you hear us? Washington, can you hear us? BlackRock, can you hear us? BlackRock, can you hear us? JP Morgan, can you hear us? JP Morgan, can you hear us? Wells Fargo, can you hear us? Wells Fargo, can you hear us? White House, 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 can you hear us? Congress, 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 can you hear us? It's time for a Green New Deal. It's time for a Green New Deal. How do you feel? How do you feel? I'm ready for a Green New Deal. I'm ready for a Green New Deal. How do you feel? How do you feel? I'm ready for a Green New Deal. I'm ready for a Green New Deal. Listen, they will try to tell us that this is impossible. Shame. Shame. They tell us it is unrealistic. Shame. They tell us it's too expensive. Shame. But let me tell you something. You know what costs more than the money we're talking about here? Doing nothing. The extinction of our species. We stand here, some people at great personal risk, because it is not possible not to stand. We have to be together. Yes. And we turn to all these cameras and all these news agencies who are paying attention right now. Well, people have been talking about this for years. You need to keep covering it, even when the celebrities aren't here. You need to follow these young people who are talking about this every single day, who are putting their lives on the line because the planet is on the line. Today is a day to begin all that can come next, and I would love to introduce somebody who can talk to us, please. And introduce yourself.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gaurav. I am a forest and lands campaigner with Friends of the Earth Action. I just want to say a few words about why we are here and who BlackRock is. BlackRock is the largest investor in the world to the tune of $6.5 trillion under management. We just think about that, $6.5 trillion. But not only that, they are the largest investor in the world in the oil and gas industry. They are the largest investor in the world in the coal industry. Like, we need new coal plants. They are the ones building new coal development, financing that all over the world. These are the very industries that are fueling climate crisis. But if that wasn't bad enough, BlackRock is also one of the top investors in rainforest destruction. The industrial agricultural commodities that are cutting down forests from Indonesia to the Amazon are being financed by BlackRock. And we know that fossil fuel emissions and the emissions from deforestation are the leading causes of the climate crisis. And this is all being financed right here by BlackRock. And so this is just another reason why we need to keep Wall Street in check. Wall Street wrecked our economy. They're currently corrupting our democracy, and now they are destroying our planet. Right now and earlier this year, we saw how the Amazon rainforest was burning. The lungs of the earth are on fire, and this is because the soy and cattle companies, the very industries once again being financed by BlackRock, are wreaking havoc on our planet. And you know, it doesn't actually make much sense, because a study just came out that showed that BlackRock actually lost $90 billion over the last decade in financing fossil fuels. It doesn't make ecological sense, it doesn't make moral sense, and hey, it doesn't even make dollars and cents. Wow. You like what I did there? Yeah. So, you know, BlackRock's raising of forests in the Amazon is not limited to that, and nor is it limited to environmental issues. Because what is happening is that at the front lines of the destruction of the world's forests are indigenous communities, our local communities who are facing violence and criminalization every day. There is a global epidemic of murder and violence against indigenous people. Every week, on average, 3 land and environmental defenders are murdered every single week. BlackRock is financing these gross human rights abuses all over the world. And right here at home, they're financing migrant detention. They're financing the companies like Palantir, who are collaborating with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, a deeply racist and authoritarian police force that are terrorizing our immigrant communities right here in D.C. and across the country. And this is the hypocrisy of BlackRock, because they say, their CEO says companies should have a social purpose. They dare call themselves the conscience of Wall Street while they are fueling climate crisis, climate migration, and then profiting from that destruction and profiting from detention. And the excuses they make are so tired and lame. The excuses that BlackRock makes is, it's not our money, we're just managing other people's money, as if people were not coming to BlackRock for the expertise they claim to have. If they wanted to, $6.5 trillion, they could shift the market. And you know what? They don't. Because if you look at their voting record, in last year, they only voted for 10% of all climate proposals. They are standing in the way of climate action. Their human rights record is even worse. They voted for 0 human rights shareholder resolutions. BlackRock is the problem. And so I will just end with this. We are here in personal solidarity with our sisters and brothers, with communities all over the world, at the front lines of extractive industries, at the front lines of agricultural development, from North Carolina to North Dakota, communities that are fighting pipelines right here in this country, and we will not stop until BlackRock changes their ways. Thank you very much.
Great job, great job. We stand on this earth, in this place, because of history. A history of exploitation of human beings and the planet that dates back to the times when human beings thought in history that it was okay to take advantage of each other, and by doing that, take advantage of the things that has been given to us that are sacred, called creation. We're here because of the history of exploitation that these corporations have built their wealth on exploiting human cargoes
that dates back to chattel slavery, which was the basis of Wall Street being formed as an entity in this country. We're here because the history of human beings have been exploited by being seen as less than human, unworthy, not entitled to the same rights as those who are the top 1% of this country, and all of those who sit with them to affirm their sense of entitlement and power. We're here because of this history, a history that says it's okay to stand silent when you see your brothers and sisters being exploited by people in power in the name of profit, in the name of expansion, in the name of the desecration of this earth and all that it provides for us on a daily basis. We're here because this history now demands that we respond no longer in silence. We respond no longer as bystanders. We respond no longer as naysayers, that change is not possible. We're here because we believe change is possible. We believe that history is not going to write our future, a new future that says that we can no longer continue to exploit our brothers and sisters. We can no longer continue to put profit over people. We can no longer continue to leave behind generation after generation helpless human beings who have no hope, who have no security, who have no refuge from exploitation. And these helpless people who are migrating because of environmental injustices, who are migrating because of climate change, need our help. They need us to stand up and become heroes and sheroes for their cause. Are you willing to be a hero or shero for these helpless people who are fleeing their countries, fleeing their homelands, fleeing the lives that they are leaving behind in hope that someone will listen to their cries, someone will listen to their vulnerability, someone will listen to their pain and say, we are here to help you. You are no longer helpless. We are here to help you become now what God intended for you to be. And that is equal in the eyes of God, but also equal in the eyes of each other. Are you willing to stand with the helpless? Yes. If you are willing to stand with the helpless and become a hero or shero, it means that you must stand for human rights. And human rights trump, no pun intended, civil rights. Human rights says, I have an inalienable right to whatever you say you and your family have, I can claim it for me and my family. A human right says that everybody is equal to clean water, renewable and regenerating land and soil, clean air, jobs, health care, and things that we all take for granted here in America. I'm entitled to those things as well. And if we're going to stand for these people who are helpless and made vulnerable because of the devastation of their homeland, coming here seeking human rights, then the thing that we must do is from this day forward, begin to see ourselves not on this soil, in this place right now, just as change agents. But when we go back home, realizing that we have a responsibility where we are, from wherever we come, to reclaim the voices of those who have been voiceless, to help those who have been helpless, so that in our own local towns and cities, and everywhere in which we have left and come to this place, we will begin to see the change happening from where we came, and begin to start changing in a way that now unites us across this land, across this country, and across this world, to bring a new future in that would say, never again shall we have to stand in a spot like this and demand change outside where people are inside making decisions against us. But we will be the ones at the table making these decisions in this new future for ourselves. God bless you.
I want to thank the young people. The young people who all around the world by the tens of millions have bravely struck from school on Fridays and inspired us, and we should not forget how brave that is. That's right. How brave it is to leave school on Friday. It can affect their brains. Their teachers can get angry with them. They can be thrown out of school, and yet every Friday they come out. And they've shown us this has to become the new normal. And they've inspired us all folks to stand up with them. And I'm so grateful. Don't stop, and we won't stop either. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sophie Gingler, and I'm 18 years old. I'm here with Sunrise D.C. I would first like to recognize that we are standing on the land of the Piscataway and Naugatuck people. I am originally from the Coachella Valley, the location of the infamous Palm Springs Coachella Valley Music Festival, Stagecoach, and endless international golf tournaments. I was born and raised in the heart of the California drought, which has been exacerbated by global climate change. I was told by my 7th grade science teachers not to take a bath because it was wasteful. I only did laundry or washed dishes when most necessary. Most of my friends' homes didn't have grass because it was too expensive to water. However, I am not the victim of this story. 30 minutes from my home is the Salton Sea, which is the largest lake in California and the largest inland sea in the country. It lies between the Imperial County and Riverside County and rests on the land of the Torres Martinez Band of Desert Pia Indians. The Salton Sea has been rapidly drying up due to lack of natural inflow and the nature of the California drought. There are 3 main feeders into the Salton Sea to keep it alive, now that the Colorado River has been dammed off. The Whitewater River, which is a small natural flowing river, all of the drainage from the Coachella Valley, as well as the entire agricultural runoff of the Imperial County, which is the 2nd largest agricultural county in California. This runoff includes toxins such as arsenic, selenium, chromium, lead, and pesticides, including DDT. It is a cesspool of toxicity that threatens the surrounding communities daily. With a rapid decline in water levels, it is exposing the lake bed that threatens to trigger toxic dust storms that will affect the residents of the Imperial County, Riverside County, San Diego County, Orange County, and Los Angeles County. There are 2 reported cases of children with climate change-induced asthma, or climate change-induced cancer at the local elementary school, as well as daily unreported cases of chronic nosebleeds and severe respiratory issues every day in the surrounding communities. If action isn't taken, large parts of Southern California will be completely uninhabitable due to persistent toxic dust storms. The communities of the Salton Sea, Imperial County, and Sky Valley are currently trying to survive what is the beginning of a widespread human rights crisis that has been overlooked for decades. If the waters of the Salton Sea have decreased further by 2030, it will not be the upper class of Los Angeles, the capitalists, the Koch brothers who have a home 30 minutes from the Salton Sea that will suffer. It will be the farm workers, the immigrants, the lower class, and the Native American tribes of Southern California